Welcome back to Workplace Revamp, the podcast where we challenge the status quo and build better workplaces from the inside out. I'm your host, Renee Madden, and today's episode is about something you won't find on a performance review or a project tracker, but it's at the core of every leader: values. My guest today doesn't just talk about values. He's lived them for nearly 4 decades in one of the highest stakes environments out there. Lloyd Buzzell served in the United States Air Force for more than 37 years. His last duty station was at the Offutt Air Force Base, where he served as U.S. Strategic Command, the Nuclear Combatant Command. Buzz enlisted in 1984, completed basic training at Lackland AFB, and worked his way up from non-commissioned officer to colonel. After commissioning as an officer in 1990, he went on to serve as an intercontinental ballistic missile officer, instructor, and commander, standing over 300 nuclear alerts, flying 700 hours of alert time on the Looking Glass jet, and leading 1,000 plus shifts in strategic missile warning and nuclear command and control operations. In his final assignment, Buzz served as the Battle Watch Commander in the Global Operations Center at U.S. Strategic Command, leading national-level emergency conferences involving senior military and civilian leaders, including the President of the United States. He holds 3 master's degrees, including one in executive coaching and organizational consulting from NYU, where he is my classmate, and he's currently finishing his studies. He's also a proud hockey fan, a 2-time Chicago Marathon finisher, a Red Cross and food bank volunteer, and lives in Bellevue, Nebraska with his wife of 44 years. They have 1 son and 2 grandchildren. After nearly 40 years of active duty, Buzz officially retired in March 2024. Today, he's channeling his leadership experience into coaching executives who want to lead with integrity, serve with purpose, and create lasting impact. Buzz, welcome to Workplace Revamp.
Thank you. Wow, that sounds very impressive. I was trying to figure out who that was when you were talking.
It
That's
is
great.
very impressive, Buzz.
No, I really appreciate that intro.
Wow. So I'm so excited for you to be here today, Buzz. So let's talk about you and what's with your signature phrase, work hard, tell the truth. What's that
Yeah,
all about?
yeah. So I kind of cornered myself into that on a focus of really trying to revamp down to what my values in life are. And a few years ago, my mom passed away. And during that weekend, we had to clean out the house. So me and my wife and my son and his wife, we cleaned out the house. And as I went through the house where I grew up, we got rid of almost everything in that house, almost everything. And as I went through that weekend, a very emotional weekend, obviously, and getting rid of a lot of her stuff, even from the stuff that she had when she got married in the 50s. And a lot of those things, some things just went in the garbage, some things went to Goodwill. And I thought, hey, what's left behind? Like what is the legacy that's being left behind? And over that time frame, I just got thinking, hey, my parents, they really worked hard. They really worked hard. And there's a lot to unpack from that phrase. And they always taught me to tell the truth and be honest. And if I could just sum up something, if my grandkids were sitting around the table 50 years from now with their kids or grandkids, and they turned to them and said, hey, Grampy, he used to say, work hard, tell the truth. Hey, let's talk about that. What does that mean? And so to me, that kind of has a lot to unpack in it about integrity, about telling the truth all the time, and working hard, not just a lot of hours, but a lot about resilience and optimism, helping other people, So it's just not like putting in more hours. But I mean, that's part of it too, is working very hard and diligently at your job or whatever task you have in life. But really work hard and tell the truth is kind of my tagline of how I kind of sum up values and where I am in life myself.
Oh, I love it, Buzz. I really do. So tell me, you spent over 30 years in the military. What made you pivot into coaching?
Yeah, so if I could have stayed in uniform, I would have. There's actually an age limit with the United States Air Force for colonels in the Air Force, and so I left with a heavy heart. I just love my time in the Air Force, working with people, leading people, mentoring people, and I worked with a lot of young leaders. And those young leaders often I would sit with and mentor and help coach and work with them and their families. It was just a tremendous experience and really just a pleasure to be able to work with folks from sometimes when they were very young lieutenant all the way up to when they retired. I mean, I spent 37 plus years in the Air Force over a span of almost 40 years. So I got to see a lot of families, a lot of young leaders, a lot of success. Not everybody finished an entire 20 plus year career, but people were very committed and really wanted to do a great job, excuse me, for their country. And it really meant a lot to them to reach success from where they are. And they're just striving and developing as people. And it was just a pleasure to see them grow from a very young officer out of college and young NCOs to be able to be a mature, contributing leader in our U.S. military. And I worked with more than the Air Force at our combatant command at U.S. STRATCOM. I was working with Marines, Navy, Space Force now, and so several other Army folks. And so it was just a pleasure to be able to spend time with them. So on a daily basis, I was mentoring and coaching with young leaders. And so being able to see that, I think, led into executive coaching. It was just a great thing to do. When you're leading teams all the time, you're doing that in action. You know, your positions when you're working with teams, you have to coach people. I don't think if you're not coaching people and helping people, you're not developing and getting that team to thrive as you move through.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about like how you developed, the younger people into becoming leaders? Like what was important in the way you approached your coaching with them?
Yeah, I think it sounds very basic, but I think developing what that vision is for yourself, for a leader, and specifically around values. I would encourage anybody to sit down and say, hey, what are my top two, three values? And it's if you can't articulate that, you're living it already. You're already doing it. You're following it, like whatever you do in life. And so I would suggest like sitting down and thinking, hey, what are my values? What, are my values are working hard and integrity, or are they, several other things you could have that would be fun. That'd be great. But if you're not working towards those values, if you're doing things opposing to those values or opposite those, you're really working against yourself. And as I'm a recent certified in the Hogan personality assessment, what that happens is that how that shows up for you, you kind of work against yourself and derail yourself in certain high pressure situations or crisis where you start working against yourself. So be able to manage those derailers and manage that in your life to be able to work towards your values and make sure you're doing that. So I'd encourage anybody to sit down and go, what are my values? What are my top things that I want to emphasize in my life? And be able to work towards those. I think that's a really basic, it sounds basic, but if you don't know where you're going in 10, 15 years from now, then really you're just going to kind of be floating in the sea without a compass or a map. And to be able to give yourself that, then you can get a little more focused. And I would encourage you to do that with your significant other, your spouse, whoever in your life you're taking this journey with. Because sometimes, you can go down the river and all of a sudden find out that like, hey, we wanted both to be on another river at the same time. So a lot of analogies there, a lot of metaphors,
Yeah, I
not
love that.
metaphors, but I think that's really where it's at, is understanding where you want to go and what your values are. And I just think that's really important.
Wow, I love that, Buzz. I really do. Can you talk a little bit about like how, as a manager, because a lot of people in financial services will tune in to the podcast and they may be managers, leaders. Like when you talk about coaching your people, like, you know, can you help them think about that? Because it's not something that comes naturally in the corporate world, right? It's like you're a manager, you tell people what to do, you tell them what they're not doing right, you tell them what they're doing well. But can you give a little insight into the best way to coach the employee?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because for the military, the one thing that people I kind of maybe they don't quite understand or their perception of what's happening in the military is always, hey, you just issue out an order and everybody follows suit and everybody falls in behind you and everything gets done perfectly. And so that's pretty easy to be a leader. Where whereas collaboration and influencing people and getting people to move toward their values, to move toward the organization's values. So to be able to align values of the individual with the organization is very important. And to have people moving toward those as a team, establishing that culture in your team and the organization is very important. And I would put it, and I'm talking around a little about your question here, but if you're establishing a culture where if you say you wanted your values instilled, it would be like going down a river floating on a raft. Like if everybody's been on a float before in inner tubes, and you go down and you have to jump out of your inner tube and get in the river, and you start walking up the river, and you can feel that force against you. You know that force. That's kind of the way you want your culture to be, right? If you're opposing your culture, you want people to feel that, and that everybody is going in the same direction down the river with you. And so I think being able to have a solid culture is one thing, and then when you're working with people is being authentic with them and really seeing them for who they are and listening to them. It sounds a little cheesy, it sounds a little basic, but if you don't listen to people, if you don't actively listen to people and show that authenticity to be able to put your servant leadership first to help people. In the military, you see that all the time, right? Like people are always putting their team's needs before theirs. And that's when you really get people working for you and doing things. And they'll do crazy things for you once they understand that. Once they understand the leader is putting their needs in front of yours. And I don't mean like on, you know, Monday morning at 10 a.m. when you're all rested, or on Thursday afternoon when you're feeling pretty good and you had lunch. I mean, like New Year's, your anniversary, your birthday, Sunday morning, Saturday afternoon, 2 a.m. on a weekday. I mean, whenever it is, you are going to help your team before yourself. And it sounds extreme, but when the team realizes that and sees that, that's some magic and happens in there. And if I could just tell one story, do you mind?
Absolutely.
So my story is actually before I came in the military, I worked a construction project in New Hampshire is where I grew up and met my wife in high school. And I was working this shortly after I got married. It was a large construction project at a nuclear site. We didn't have any material on site, but there was a containment building. That down the bottom of that containment building was a very dangerous place, a lot of pipes, a lot of metal, a lot of places you could get hurt. And so one evening I was working the evening shift and somebody got hurt at the bottom of that containment building. And so the kind of the word went through I mean, it's a small, like, 2,000 or 3,000 people. All of a sudden, like, hey, somebody's hurt in the bottom of the containment building. Very hard to get them out of there. So emergency forces are headed there. We kind of go to the containment building, and many of us show up to find out if this guy's okay. The containment building, there's like a cutout so you can drive a truck in between. They'll seal that all up at the end and make it safe. Well, it's in the evening. It's like if you can imagine a John Wayne movie, out of the containment building comes this general foreman, and his name was Red, and he had a beard. He was red, hair was red. Comes out of there with the guy over his shoulder, lays him on a gurney. The emergency services show up. It's just incredible. I mean, and his name was Red. He was a very gregarious and hard foreman working on the construction project. Very tough, tough guy. I mean, really tough guy. But people just went very excited about very saving that person and bringing that person out of the containment building, because what they realized was Red was putting that guy's needs and that guy's needs in front of his. Like he went down there in a very dangerous situation to get his guy out of there. And not just that he put that guy's needs, but we all knew that if we were in trouble and our team was there, that Red would do that. And I guarantee you that Red, I don't think bought another beer from anybody from that project. I'm sure somebody paid for beer for him. But I thought, wow, at such a young age, I think I was 20, I thought, wow, that's the leader I want to be like. I want to be like that guy that is willing to help somebody and take care of somebody's lives and be in their lives and know when to do that and when not to do that. And that made a big impression upon me even before I went in the Air Force. And I saw that many times in the Air Force too. I mean, it was just an incredible moment. Just like, it's in the evening time. There's smoke and steam going across the project, and he just emerges from the darkness and comes out. It was a
That's
movie-like atmosphere.
amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
And I
very.
love that because a lot of times in the corporate world, I've seen where people work against each other, right? Like they try to be, well, I want to get the credit for this instead of we are doing this together. So how do you change a culture is it just from managing and coaching? Like how do you change if you have bring someone in who maybe doesn't have those values? How can you help turn that around?
Well, that is the hard thing, right? Culture, is it culture eats strategy for breakfast? Isn't that the same
Yes.
phrase? Well, hiring people, I think, is very important. Bringing people in and bringing them people, they always talk about people on the bus in your business. Are they in the right seats? Are they even on the right bus? And so before you bring a person in, you have to know if they culturally fit. And just to go back to your Hogan personality assessment, I think understanding a person's personality helps to find out where they fit on that bus and where they fit on the team, if they even fit on the team at all. So
Yeah.
it's very important that you establish a culture of the organization. If the organization has that culture and you come into that culture, hopefully you'll be absorbed in that culture. And that if something happens, like integrity, what you want in your culture is that the leader isn't necessarily the one that's correcting the behavior all the time. It's the teammates. Somebody reaches over and Renee says to Buzz, "Hey Buzz, that's really not how we do that here." Oh, okay. And usually in a great culture, it just takes a little nudge. And I think in that nudge, that will bring that person back to where, oh, okay, right, that's not the way we do things here. And I mean, that's just a typical way, whether that's somebody trying to cheat, somebody trying to take advantage of the system. And those little things kind of chip away. They chip away at it. And if you can think of like there's a really good book on this. There's like those things that before you come out and protect like a parking lot, like the bollard, like the real bollard that if you smash into it. Well, if you take a hammer and you just keep hammering at that bollard, probably the first hammer won't do anything to it. But over a course of time, just continuing to hammer at that, it's going to chip away at that. And that's kind of like chipping away at your character. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, it's okay to do this. It's okay to lie on we went on a business trip and I'll add on $20 here, or, I'll park in the parking spot I'm not supposed to. And after a while, it just chips away. And that integrity and those values really mean a lot in the long run. And so when you're in crisis, when you're under pressure, those things will show up again, and that will bring your culture down. And I think in every organization, the fish stinks from the head down. So it all starts with leadership. If the leadership says the words and then models the words, people are going to see that and hear that. There's a great story, not necessarily about values, about General George Patton in World War II. And they're going across Europe, and he sees this Jeep that's broken down by the side of the road, and there's a guy under there trying to work on it. So Patton has his driver pull over and he crawls under there. And now this is muddy. It's disgusting, dirty. Patton's in full uniform. He crawls under there. He's a general of the entire army. Crawls under there and spends 20 minutes with this guy under the dirt and the mud. This guy's telling him what's wrong. He pulls himself out. He's filthy. He gets back in the Jeep, and as he pulls away, his aide says to him, "Hey, General, what was wrong with that Jeep?" And General Patton's like, "I have no idea, but they're going to be talking about that for the rest of the war." And so I think modeling and showing people and those tales that people will tell about the boss and culturally really are important to the team. And they will see you. They're watching you, whether
Oh,
you
yeah,
think so or not.
there we are. I love it. And I do want to talk about Hogan because you did mention that, and I know we've been talking about it. But can you talk, before we go there, can you talk a little bit about the value statement? And I know you told me this a couple of weeks ago and how you used it, because I feel like that's something that corporations are starting to have value statements, but I don't know if they necessarily know how to use it with their employees.
Well, the great thing about that Hogan personality assessment, it's actually three parts. And one of those is motivation, values, and preferences. And you can see people, their preferences for having people around them and where they fit on the team. And so not everybody's personality is exactly the same, as we all know. And not everybody's personality is necessarily fit to be the leader. Not necessarily every personality is set to be one piece of the team. But what's important to know about personality is where you need them on the team, because you need certain people on your team. And understanding how they work and tick is very, very important. And so those values are important, from how they're brought up, how they're raised, how their parents treated them, the church. So they gain all those things through the course of the life. And at some certain point in life, they become pretty stable and it doesn't change. And so the other part of that test is knowing where your strengths are and where those overused strengths that you can manage. So once you have that self-awareness, which is the very key there for a leader, is their self-awareness, right? Once they're self-aware, then they can manage that and mold that so that they're not overusing those strengths as they work with their people. Because you don't want to be, say, excitable in a situation that derails you or is negative for you in those situations. You want to be able to manage that and understand about yourself and recognize those traits and symptoms as you walk into it. So there's personality, then we talk behaviors. And then your behaviors is where people will sometimes watch you and see you, and they'll tell those stories too, good and bad. And so you want to make sure you want to portray the right culture and the right things to other people to be able to portray that and model that, I think.
What was your value statement in the military? Because I thought you had mentioned you did have one and you lived it and worked it every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. The Air Force many years ago established integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And as you work through that in the Air Force, if you were to ask any Air Force individual, that's what we have and as values. And there's many, many symbols in the Air Force that have that inside of them, and that you can see that. Even our emblems show that designation of those three things. You can see that everywhere. And a key thing is, like, if you're counseling somebody, you relate that back to those values. It's like, hey, you disappointed me today. That's not in line with our career value, our Air Force value of excellence in all we do. Like, you really disappointed me, and I expect more out of you the next time you do that, and that you work with people and to be able to help them. And I think if you relate back to values and you live that every day, then you can't be wrong. Are you going to make mistakes? Yes. You're an actual person, a human being, so you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say the wrong thing, you're going to do the wrong thing. But hopefully most of the time, and I always said this, you're having your best day. You try and have your best day. And on your best day, you say the right thing, you do the right thing, you model your values, you follow your values, you follow the culture. But sometimes you don't always have your exact best day. But if that is your focus, if that's what you're trying to do, you have a lot more best days than you have bad days. So I think that's kind of where you win. And I think that shows up for you in the workspace by being authentic. And I think that transverses a lot of, work. Like, you can say, well, I work in a financial institution, I work in the military, I work in a restaurant, I work in a, whatever setting you're in. You transfer those things into that setting of being authentic and being a servant leader. Everything is based on one basic thing in life, and that's trust. And all relationships are built on trust. That's the relationship with your boss. That's the relationship with your significant other. That's a relationship with your friends is trust. And you build that trust through being authentic and being helping other people and listening to them and being there for them. That's how you build that trust with people. And that's how you're going to build trust with the people that are working with you, your peers. Once you get to know a person and that leader is authentic with you, like, hey, Renee, she really shows up for me. She's there. She's listening to me. She's present for me. She knows where I'm coming from. And if you know somebody, you're more generally to go, oh, Renee probably, I don't know why she's doing this, but I know Renee. And so she wouldn't do this if there wasn't a good reason. And if there's not a good reason, Renee probably was trying to do something right. And so I think that's important to be able to establish that trust with your people. And
Yeah, I love that because it's honest. And so, yes, everyone makes mistakes. So if you call the person in and say, "Look, Renee, you didn't do that the right way. What were you thinking there?" And you kind of talk through it. And I love that. And I don't think that always, unfortunately, happens in the corporate world. So I love the way you talk about this. And it does sound so easy, but it I don't know. It's hard to get that across. But you did mention the Hogan assessment. So can you tell us what that is and how companies can use that with their employees?
Absolutely. I mean, there's several different ways you can use that. The test is actually three different parts, and we talked about the values piece of it first, but there's also identity versus reputation. So when you answer the questions on the three pieces of the test, that first one is about your identity, and then it's how people see you. And those are two different things, right? So for a leader, what's more important is how people see you, because that's your reputation. That's how people are going to react to you. The second part of that is being able to identify those overused strengths. So if you're a very bold leader, that may work for you in that setting, but you don't want to overuse it in settings where it's going to be a negative type of strength for you. But everything's in context. So by being able to speak to that person and finding out what they do and how they do it and how they use it and how that shows up for them is very important. So you say, well, what's the right personality, wrong personality? There is no right or wrong personality. The personality is yours. It's how you manage and use that and your self-awareness of your personality. That is really the strength of that Hogan, is that there's a bright side, that there's a side in one test that they're showing you as your ID and reputation. And then in your derailers, how you may overuse those strengths. And then being aware of that if you want to work on that and be able to manage that. And then finally, your motivation, values, and preferences. And that will show you the things like altruistic. Do you want to be around people and be in something that to help people? And so if you think about it, like probably most of your people in nonprofits hold that very high value. Probably people that lead organizations are very high in bold or power, and that there's people that are in marketing situations are very high in social. And so those type things come out in that personality assessment. And being able to understand that, those are used for hiring. It's used for understanding to be able to get a leader in a better situation. It's helping those people improve their work performance, and also, especially to see where they fit on the team. In our assessment training, very, very great team coaching type of exercise where we moved around the room according to personalities. What was very apparent early on to me was, hey, I am in this quadrant, I'm in this corner, but over there's a young lady that's very capable, that's not the same personality as me, but I need that person on the team because I don't have that strength. I don't have those capabilities, and she's really, really good at what she does. So she fits somewhere in the team and I fit somewhere in the team. And understanding that everybody fits on the team some way and being able to manage that as a leader is important. And I think that's one of the strengths of Hogan also, is to be able to understand that. So you don't think like, oh, that's the way Renee acts. Like, why is she acting like that? Well, that's her personality. That's my personality, and that's how we interact together. And different from some other psychometric type exercises or tests, this is about your personality. It's very, very, very deep and evidence-based research. They continually to feed that information back into the system, and there's millions upon millions of type assessments have been given. So they're continue to refine those assessments. And that's really the strength of it beyond some of these assessments that you'll see online that are very quick and used and are not necessarily bad, but the Hogan is probably the strongest, and for the length of time to use it, maybe stronger than a 360 because a 360 takes so long to be able to put together. And so for a Hogan assessment can be taken in 45 minutes, and then the assessment and be able to outbrief that person and realize that where a 360 would take a long time.
And it's also, you could do it for the whole team, right? So that
Yes,
you can,
yes.
and it helps, does it help learn how each team member can work together based on their personality?
Yeah, and that exercise I was talking about, even that day when I hadn't really met those people before that first day, and when we started, I got to know the people. It was kind of extraordinary. In like just an hour and a half, I started understanding who people were in the group and how they would fit together on the team if we were putting a team together. If I was going to lead a team, I'd be like, well, that person should be over there and that person should be over here. And when we're in a team meeting or we're in a crisis or under pressure, I would expect this from this person. And so we would be able to work together and that everybody fits on the team in a different and better way. Yeah, there's a
Oh, that sounds great.
huge amount of strength in it, huge amount.
Oh, that's great. Oh, Buzz, I love it. Last question for you, Buzz. What's your advice to leaders who are trying to lead with integrity, but they feel stuck in the system that rewards something else?
Yeah, I got to say that. So if I were to say it, I'd say integrity is not passive. You need to know what your own values are. You need to be able to articulate those and you need to hold fast. I would also say you need to surround yourself with truth tellers. In other words, how you develop in life in any situation is where you want to work around people that are in the same work culture, the same value set as you are. And if you're truly in a situation that you're not thriving in, that could be a very well an issue. And really, it just really all falls back on integrity, right? I mean, if you're not built on integrity, that is the basis. I think if you ask most people, telling people the truth, whether that's talking to your employees, the employee talking to you, and if you've ever had anybody in a work setting just out just lie to you, which has happened to me,
Never
um,
happens.
yeah, more than once, and you're just like, what's going on here? Like, what's happening? And that's where it's important to know the person too. You know, there could be something going on at home, there could be something happening, but I think if you're really stuck somewhere, maybe that's not the place that you need to be. Maybe that's not where you are I mean, you kind of think of the Enron company, right? I mean, if you sit yourself in Enron, what would you do if you were in that situation? I don't know if I would last very long there. Eventually, something would have to change. That would weigh heavily on a person that's value set aren't there. I was in a situation in a like a really high pressure situation on 9/11. And on 9/11, I had the situation where there was some paperwork that wasn't done correctly, and somebody said, "Hey, should we just put somebody else's name on this and kind of get around the rules here?" And I thought about it. In that crisis situation, the person next to me that day turned to me and said, "Hey, no, let's just follow the rules. It'll be better this way. Just follow the rules." And then he said something that really struck me that I've always followed through on. And he said, "You can never go wrong by telling the truth." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like why wasn't I ready to say that? Why wasn't I in the moment ready to say that?" And I was like, I wasn't fully prepared, even after all those years in the Air Force. I mean, many years in the Air Force. And so I just sat down and said, okay, from now on, if I come into an integrity situation, I'm going to be ready to tell people, hey, you can never go wrong by telling the truth. And so I've really told that story to every single one of my young officers. Like, you need to sit down and really think through how you're going to face that situation. There's a pretty good book and a lady that's written when give voice values to give voice to values, And that book talks about working with young people too, and proposing situations like, hey, what if somebody were to give you the answers to a test that you're going to take tomorrow? It's like, hey, I found these answers to the test. We can cheat and I'll get 100 on this. How would you react to it? Who would you go tell? What would you do? How would you react to that? And I think thinking ahead on those situations, think ahead on what you would do in that. And eventually, if you're like, hey, I'm in a situation and I'm drawing a line. And if the boss comes in and says, hey, I want you to fake these financials, I want you to change this wording in our favor to make ourselves look good. And you're like, I can't hold true on that. That's just, I won't do that. And these are the people I'm going to go talk to, and this is how it's going to end. And it's a very easy thing for me to say sitting here. But in the military, I had years and years ago, I had a situation where I had to go tell my boss, hey, I don't think what you're doing is correct, morally and ethically. And I really struggled with it. And I went to somebody to get some counseling, some advice on it. And they asked me a very basic question, is like, well, do you care about your boss? And you care about the organization, the unit? And I was like, well, those are tough questions. Of course I do. I think I do. Yes. Well, if you answer yes to both those, you need to go talk to him. You need to tell him that, because if you care about him and you care about the unit and the organization, then you're going to act on it. And I've always thought back to that day of him counseling and talking to me about it. But it was very valuable to me, and I've used that with folks. And usually, if you have an integrity issue and you're trying to face it down and you're trying to make a decision on, hey, should I do this or should I not do it? I think you already know the answer. The question is, are you ready to do it, and how are you going to do it? It's not that you're like, hey, I'm going to go talk to my boss and tell him that this is ethically incorrect or I won't follow it. You already know that it's wrong. You've already made that decision.
Right.
Just the hard piece is, wow, I'm going to really struggle with going to tell him that. And the day I walked in there and told him that was a very, it bothered me a lot. Like, I mean, I really struggled with it, but I just went in there and was like, hey, this is hard for me to say. I'm nervous about telling you this, but I'm going to tell you, and you can take whatever action you want to. But I need to tell you this to make myself right. I don't believe in this. I'm going to tell you this right now. So it's a very tough situation to be in. I know everybody's faced down some type of ethical or moral
Yeah.
integrity issue. But once again, the fish stinks from the head down. So
I love that.
when the leader follows it, when they follow those type of moral compass, then the team will instantly follow that. Not instantly, but they will follow that, and it'll build a culture.
Oh, Buzz, I could talk to you forever, but I really appreciate you being here. You reminded us that leadership isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, doing the work, and telling the truth. So, Buzz, where can people connect with you or learn more about your work?
Yeah, not surprising, my website is Work Hard, Tell the Truth, all one word.
Love
So
it.
if you type that into a browser, I think you'll be able to find me. And then also on LinkedIn, I'm Buzzell. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. And I just wanted to make a couple of book recommendations, Renee.
Yeah, go for it.
Shamelessly, they're not my books. I'll probably recommend two or three books. One is Sunny Lampasso's Level Up Your Influence. It's a great book, not surprising again, about values. Very, very nice model in there about moving toward your values, understanding what's underneath and moving toward values. Another one is by Colonel Lee Ellis. He was one of our POWs in Vietnam. He's written a series of books, but Colonel Ellis is one of my heroes in life. And he talks about Engage with Honor is one of his books, but he's written several books all about integrity. He was in the Hanoi Hilton for many years, and he runs his own business and talks about integrity and how to work with people. And then there's a Kate Murphy book. I just happened to grab them out this morning. You're Not Listening. I would
Oh,
recommend that to every leader that just talks about how to listen to people and to be able to focus on some practical tools to get there. And then if there was anything I could recommend also is Eddie Jacquo's book. He is passed away now, but he was a Holocaust survivor, the happiest man in the world. If you can't read his book, listen to the TED Talk. I think it's like 15 minutes. It's worth the listen on TED Talks. Eddie
um,
Jacko, Jaku,
Eddie.
yeah, Jaku, Eddie Jacko, and happiest man in the world. Incredible, incredible human being. He made it through, I think his dad made it through the concentration camps. There's a lot of great messages in his books. All these books, about leadership and about who you are, what your values are, and what you're centered on. And I think if I could leave anything, I'd say make sure you understand what your values are. Sit down, take a little time, get a list of all the values, figure out what your values are, and be able to articulate that. If you can articulate that, I mean, think about that. If you can't articulate your values, then how can you follow your values?
So great, Buzz. You are amazing. Be-
Well, thank you.
You
I need you
really
to follow
are.
me around every day and tell me that.
Before we go, can you tell us about the quilt behind you?
Oh, yeah, this is one of my wife's quilts. She's a fantastic quilter. Of course, I love my wife. We've been married for 45 years this August. We
Oh
were
my
high
God.
high school sweethearts. We met during a campaign. I was campaigning for junior class president, so I was trying to get her vote, but she was in the class ahead of me, so it wouldn't have counted anyway. But she made this quilt, hand quilted it, and
Oh, beautiful.
several quilts. If I could show you the room, there's got to be 30, 40 of them in here, but she does just a fantastic job, and she likes to give them away. She doesn't sell them, and she does a fantastic job with them. And they
And
make me
what's your
feel good.
wife's name?
Oh, Kim. Yeah, Kim.
Kim.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Kim, beautiful.
it's
Love
really
it.
nice. I bring one every 2 weeks when I give platelets. So I surround myself with my wife's love and while we're giving platelets every 2 weeks.
Oh my God. I mean, Buzz, I talk to Buzz every Sunday morning and he makes my Sundays. And this is being recorded on Easter. So happy Easter for those who do celebrate. But
Is risen.
yeah, and Buzz, thank you again so much for today. I really enjoyed it. And I know that so many people will get so much for from this episode. But that's it for today's episode of Workplace Revamp. If you like this conversation, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you don't need a job to lead with new values. Start where you are. Thank you so much. Have a good day.